excited about our next guest. He's coming directly from the beautiful Johannesburg in South Africa today. And I'm talking about Mgcinisihlalo Jordan. He's here with us. He is the Deloitte Africa Deputy Chief Executive and member of its executive committee since 2012. Mgcinisihlalo is responsible for the firm's clients and industries function, digital strategy, corporate development, and innovation portfolios, together with the business performance of the firm's functional businesses. He's a previous member of the firm's global board of directors and sat on the governance and risk committees, a representation of the firm's largest global practices at Deloitte. He has served large financial service clients on the continent as lead or advisory partner and is passionate about Africa's development. Throughout his career at Deloitte, Mgcinisihlalo has led projects in the Middle East and the rest of the African continent, along with assignments throughout Europe and in the United States. In 2010, Mgcinisihlalo served on the Deloitte Global Advisory Council, where he was among 25 partners across the world, advising the firm's global executive and CEO on Deloitte's future strategy towards 2020. And here we are today in 2021, driving the strategy for the next decade. And what a pleasure to have you, Mgcinisihlalo, with us, sharing your expertise with our global audience today.
Thank you, Jose. I hope I'm coming through very loud and clear. And thank you for that very generous welcome to you, for me, and to your platform. So I'll be spending about 35 minutes with you with question and answers at the end, just talking through our thoughts as a firm around this concept of a digital transformed workplace. It's quite topical, as you would imagine, sitting down here in the tip of Africa. We've certainly felt the same global shifts that have been experienced right through the world. You might think that what we want to talk about actually has been driven by, the generation of it has been driven by COVID. But the impetus behind some of the trends that I will cover is actually over a decade ago, but has just been accelerated by the pandemic. Jose, you mentioned my role on the Global Advisory Council in 2009, 2010. I won't be too generous ourselves, but some of the trends that we saw back then are now living in full flight in terms of how we are approaching the world. The global working world is approaching this concept of digital and future of work. So my agenda for today will cover the following aspects. I'll do a quick introduction and then talk about this concept of rebooting the digital workplace. I will share some tools and models that we as a firm use for ourselves, but also we use in the marketplace, and then talk about how you actually create a digital workforce. So let me start with maybe some statistics behind this. This is our global research that was conducted at the back end of 2010 and shows trends that I'm sure many of you have been reading about and experiencing at the workplace. To signpost where I'll end up in my conversation, and that is the concept of looking at future of work or the workplace or the workforce separate strategy actually doesn't work. So organizations are fundamentally asking new questions and making bold decisions around a critical human capital. And that those risks and those opportunities have to be in the context of what is the strategy of the firm and the strategy of the organization and where the organization is taking place. The other reflection is that the dichotomy between the C-suite and the workforce has never been more greater. So the C-suite expects some shifts in workers and then how workers will work remotely. You would have seen for us as a global firm, Deloitte has announced some pretty far-reaching and fundamental changes in terms of how our workforce will operate and interact with us and with our clients. In the UK and the geographies around that, we've made it clear that there will never be an expectation for our workforce to return back into the office. Our belief is that those shifts will continue to happen right through the organization. Yet, our research shows that only 8% of those organizations that have this view that the workforce and the workplace has fundamentally changed permanently are ready to address the same challenges. And of course, a vast majority of workers believe that the skills that they need to develop into this new digital economy have yet to be developed. So we're seeing a picture of fundamental changes that are taking place, yet organizations are perhaps lagging in how they want to approach this concept of workforce. If there's anything that I miss in this presentation, the one that I want to signpost up front as key is that the strategy cannot work in parallel to whatever workplace or workforce activities and initiatives that we are planning for. The expectations of the workforce are also changing. So you'll see, again from the same research, that our workforce are expecting more flexibility and autonomy in terms of how they decide the work that they need to do. Many organizations are moving to a model where there is a completed mix of on-site and remote workers, and this shift may raise concerns around productivity, relationship building, and onboarding. Development and learning opportunities are also going to be fundamentally affected. And key as a leader of our innovation strategy in the firm would also be that innovation, if it's not designed as part of this new generation of digital workforce, would also suffer. Companies may be able to overcome some of these challenges by embracing opportunities to optimize workforce experience, such as leveraging data and new ways of working remotely and in the office. So this duplicity of working within offices, within home and the office will continue for some time still. And then what is key for this, as you increase your digitization, as you increase the work that is driven by data, there's an increased need to pay attention to cybersecurity. In a different survey that we did in the same time frame of last year, leading into 2021, amongst the top CEOs across the world, cybersecurity, not in the context necessarily of workforce and workplace, was raised as the #1 by a 20 percentage point margin, by the #1 risk that CEOs and global organizations are facing. And certainly, cybersecurity in the context of this data-infused, analytical, capable workplace conversations are going to be key aspects of how you respond to the challenges. Many are expecting the trust between the colleagues and breaking down these hierarchies will continue to spread, and that there will be a need for organizations to particularly pay attention in building these activities to build trust in an organization where employees may never be able to physically be sitting in the same room for years at a time, but are working on major transformational cross-business projects where trust is an essential element of how they do business. Some of them expect the skills will be different from what they have right now. I'm a passionate believer in reinventing yourself. I spend probably something like 20 to 30 minutes every day learning something completely new outside of my profession, in pursuit of just being a digital native and learning a lot more. And I'm certainly not in the younger generation age group, but those individuals need to be stimulated, they need to be driven to acquire more and more skill sets. And of course, RPA and AI are going to be playing a much bigger role. I challenge the view of many organizations as to whether they actually use RPAs and AI technologies for the benefit and the betterment of employees and workplace activities, or is it just more for show and don't really have a business case and a case for change? So the data and the insights that can be gleaned from digital workplaces will help organizations improve work processes, employee experiences, and to create better outcomes, flexible workplaces, and this digital flexibility that we refer to. For example, if you combine all of these challenges on the slide, the data generated by digital workplaces can help recognize when an employee is feeling stressed and fatigued and may nudge them in terms of taking a break. This is the power of AI and the data behind workplace transformation. Another example would be, instead of finding a new available time to meet, the data could help identify the next best time to meet based on data that's been that has been compiled and indicates when is the optimal time when an employee may be at their peak performance. So matching performance versus the productivity of the employee. I think you believe that we are just scratching the surface around the possibility of new things that we can do around a data-centric workplace. On the slide shows the design framework that we use when we have these discussions with our own clients. And at the center of the conversation is value created. So we make the hypothesis at our clients, and we do that for ourselves, that in the end, the design of the workplace and how this interacts with work to be done and the workforce that you're creating for the future needs to have a design philosophy and objective in the heart of everything that you do. And that objective for us sits literally in the sweet center between operational efficiency, how you reduce cost in terms of all of your major work plans and work throughs at an organization, and of course, employee engagement. If you hit the sweet spot, this is where workforce and workplace transformation can really catapult many organizations to greater productivity and greater outcomes. But said that physical offices aren't going away. The daily commute may vanish, but the office will continue to play a meaningful role as it moves away from people away from rituals towards purpose. I'm a fundamental believer that you need to create purpose in a workplace environment for particularly Gen Zs and millennials to feel the contribution that they need to make in many organizations. So many of the firms that we work with are remodeling office space to create more collaborative and innovation hubs. We ourselves in the Johannesburg head office of a Deloitte Africa firm have moved at the height of COVID in March of last year into a new building. We spent some time just thinking through how we design the 6 floors. The first thing was in the design philosophy, we were absolutely clear in this bottom right-hand corner around the workplace that unlike some of our competitors that sat around us, we would not go for example, for a tall cylinder tower of some 25, 30 floors, but we worked with a much flatter organization, organizational plan, a building plan, 6 floors, big plates to create this collaboration centers and hubs. And it's been working well, notwithstanding the fact that some of our employees haven't been to the office, to the new offices in light of COVID. But those workplaces actually a vast majority of the physical workspace that we have created. Probably about 60 to 70% of the floor plans are dedicated to collaborations, and the balance are for partners and their staff to work with. These collaboration spaces are being built with digital technologies to augment the on-site work experience and enable virtual and multi-directional collaboration with remote workers as a priority. And so virtual teams can be able to engage online and at present. We've actually tested some of these technologies with our clients. Our chair of the board in Africa had a future of boards and the future of chair, a report that she presented to something of the order of 50 of our local Johannesburg Stock Exchange listed chairs of boards. And she did that from the collaboration side, one of the collaboration sites that were built in the firm. And the notion of, and some of the chairs were on premises, some of them were online, but the concept of multiplicity in terms of how we work is a feature that is here to stay in my view. So we're able to engage our clients both in physically and virtually. There is a movement from concept to action. So it's easy to design some of this. So the first step is the proper design, as I've said in this previous slide. But it's easy to design this with all the bells and whistles without actually having a core objective. And that is, for us at least, to action to humanize the future of work. In fact, we use this concept often nowadays, and we're telling our clients the future of work, of course, is already with us. It's time to go beyond, analyzing the disruption on work to actually adopting and putting in action some of the organizational needs that need to be adopted for the future workplace. We need to broaden the definition of what a workplace looks like, and to understand how we can optimize some of the environments that we've got. So the key words are to re-architect, and that is to literally start from scratch and understand that what we built for now in the midst of some of the lockdowns and COVID-related activities will live with us for 20 years, 30 years into the future. To unleash the future potential of your employees, a collaboration with them in terms of what your workforce is actually calling for, even if you know what the outcome is going to be for 80% of the design, it's important that you incorporate them early in the conversation to make some of the leaders in the workforce voice of the workforce in collaborating and building the workplace and the workforce of the future. And of course, as an innovation capability to always adopt as and when you need to change course. This slide represents the concept of rebooting the digital workplace. I started off by making the point that everything must be premised on what is the future direction of the firm, what are the choices from a strategy perspective that you are making. And of course, key to any strategic work plan or any strategic initiative for that matter is the ability to measure and manage. Part of the data, AI, and RPA work that goes into this design is to incorporate the ability for leaders and the executive of the firms that we work with in the market to be able to measure and manage outcomes. Now, this can fill employees and the workforce with particular discontent in terms of what is the data useful. So ethical use of data and the need to measure and manage that these two seemingly competing agendas, the need to measure and manage data and outcomes against what ethically is that data useful is an important conversation that employers can use as they gain insights that enable them to identify these future patterns and trends. The Office of the Future becomes the hub of collaboration and innovation, and of course for meetings. And the design feature that we are adopting is this one that says, as an example, maybe that's the best way to describe it, is our partners at the office, like in many jurisdictions across the global world, work with hot desks. But there's also a need for us to create hot collaboration centers. So this could be, in our case, either driven by an industry focus or a capability focus. So if you are working on financial services as an example, or banking, insurance clients, we create, manufacture, and proactively create spaces and collaboration centers where every professional, notwithstanding wherever the discipline is, it could be an auditor, it could be a tech engineer, it could be a tax professional, they all, we create a sense of belonging, collaborative space, physical space and virtual space, where they come for one day in a month as financial services practitioners, where they previously would not have a need to collaborate, just to create this office of the future. And of course, it's important that we create new ways of work around data and insights, and the workplaces of the future will continuously, and we don't know what the full extent of changes will be in terms of new ways of working. We've adopted the early stages of remote working and this combination of physical and virtual work. There is no doubt that there will be future trends as these technologies and better opportunities are created in the market. At the core of our conversation is the employee experience. So what we've done is we've used a model that we've shown at our clients, and that is at the core of everything that we do as an organization is our client or customer experience. So as a B2B firm, our clients are themselves big organizations that look after customers, so we use that name interchangeably. If we've created, and the premise is that we can create the best client experience that the firms that we work with in the market can have, then we overlap that, we wrap that around our employee experience. This is seemingly very logical to me, but in terms of how we presented it at the firm for our own work, it just found itself to be quite controversial. And why I say it's quite controversial is in a world where there's been lots of suffering, lots of heartache around COVID, the view, particularly from some of our executives and workforce, is that the employee experience needs to be a core. But we're essentially a customer-oriented, a client-oriented organization. And so what we found is that our workforce gravitates much more together, collaborating together, if they've got an end in mind, and that end in mind is really creating the best client experiences that we can design. And when that falls into place, and we've described it and we've demonstrated how that client experience works, then the employee experience benefits as a result. That creates this purpose-driven culture that people, organizations, space, and the digital frontiers are all merging to create the best employee experience and the best customer experience. And there's some key elements which I won't cover in detail around what purpose means in this environment, flexible working arrangements, collaborative work, and of course, need for us to look at more real estate and facilities strategy. The next slide talks about what will it take to get this right, and here we've adopted a three-phase approach as some of our guiding principles. And of course, there's no start and end, but it's really circular and referencing to each other. But I'll probably start on the left, and that is to listen what our people have said. And this is where data-led decision-making can be very instrumental. When we go back to our people and say, we have created this new workplace, as we did with our waterfall building here in Johannesburg, we created and generated a high sense of employee belonging, because they felt consulted, they felt like there was a foundation under which, literally and figuratively, the foundation from which we will build the future work principles. And then we spend time in designing, as we always do with clients, with the future in mind. Of course, at the time, we didn't really understand the impact that COVID would create. We designed the building probably 18 to 24 months before COVID actually hit. But some of the principles that we put in place was the need for us to be working more collaboratively, the need for us to have this adaptability of moving workforces in a relatively short period of time away from the office for whatever reason. Of course, the reason wasn't a pandemic, but it was, for example, the need for us to collaborate on site at our clients' places and come back to the office to collaborate further. And so this flexibility and adaptability was a principle in the design put in place. And then to continue to define and refine what works and change in relatively short space of time is a key capability around a workforce and workplace. The digitized employee experience is another model that we work with when we look at our clients' operations. And this is the concept that organizations must evolve the HR or talent programs through technology to physical facilities that support the workforce of the future. So the slide, the model itself is quite self-explanatory. Technology in the middle, driving talent and HR, human capital capabilities, with real estate as an enabling or accelerator in terms of these conversations. But the start point, as I keep saying, is a strategy, because not every client that we work with has got the exact same strategy. And so the experience, the employee experience that we design will change as a result of that particular strategy. I've highlighted here what's important in terms of expectations for a digital workplace. Again, a design feature that works very well in the market. And to the right is really the business imperatives that a typical organization has found. This is real data that's been collected from our clients in terms of what they're telling us. Best in class remote connectivity, flexible platforms, the right mix of tools and technology, adapting this work with the platforms and creating a more agile business, and the sense of connection, teaming, and purpose can all be accelerated through the concept of designing clients, designing employees, and how your suppliers are integrated, coordinated, and aligned to your business purpose. The last model that I will demonstrate in the last few minutes is the digital ready worker model. And that's effectively a 2x2. You want to be on the top right, where you have workers who look over the horizon and see new digital opportunities. This is a question-based assessment that we do at our clients, and it gives you a view as to what is the majority of your workforce made up of. So we can say that at Deloitte, for example, we've got more than, in Africa specifically, more than 75% of our workforce is either millennials or Gen Zs. The natural inclination is to think that these are digital pragmatists or digital explorers. But some of the findings that are we're starting to uncover actually surprise and are a contradiction to that notion, of intuitive notion, that these younger workforces are naturally digital explorers. But where you end up is then going to define what workplace and digital strategies that you design around workplace and workforce conversations. And then I wanted to just, maybe this should be the first slide around what are these drivers of disruptions, and the slides will show be available, or say they feel free to share them and ask any questions. But they are the normal things that we've adopted, understood. The key one is data, and the fact that there's been this technology implosion, continues to be so for probably for the next 5 to 10 to 15 years. And then creating the workplace conditions. This is a summary of what we've said before. Physical layout, collaboration, culture being key, proximity around the physical workforce, and what geographies they need to work with, all key elements. I've run out of time, and I want to thank everyone for listening. I'm ready to take any questions.
Mgcinisihlalo Jordan, thank you so much. What a great presentation! What a great journey for successful digital transformation. And I want to remind the audience, I see your questions, and I'm gonna relay as many as I possibly can in the time that we have allocated here for the Q&A. But keep asking the questions. I'll keep an eye on those coming through, and I will convey them to Mgcinisihlalo here in real time. My first question has to do with, you know, you are looking at digital transformations around the world, and then we, you know, certainly COVID accelerated digital transformations because we had a lot of time, you know. As I said in the beginning of the conference, we had 5-year digital roadmaps, and then all of a sudden we had to implement those things in 5 days. So, but now in the rush of implementing digital technologies, some organizations have done it well, some organizations have not really done it well. So beyond remote working, the technologies for remote work, what do you see, Mgcinisihlalo, in the last 18 months or so that has been a positive shift with technology implementation? Any specific technologies that really stand out to you, not as the hype or the potential of the technology, but the realization of that potential, being AI, blockchain, NLP? What are you seeing that's really driving value from a digital technology perspective?
Seemingly a simple question to a simple answer to a very complex question, as I said. So I think that there are many technologies that will still be driven and developed over the next few years. But if I have to call out one, and it's probably at the early generation and development, would be AI. AI has truly given capabilities initially to the customer interface areas, and now to employee interface. The key element to this is trust. I referred to it in my presentation. The employees and the workforce that you need to work with need to trust that the data and some of the technologies that will be driven are for their betterment, and in the end drive a common purpose and a common understanding of where the organization is. Without that, you can have the best technologies, you can have the best implementation, and it will fall down rather, on the premise of employees just don't adopt to it.
Very well, very well. I have here a shout out to you from Pune, India, from Franklin, who is with iPlace, saying that, you know, what a great presentation. Thank you for sharing that. So Franklin, that has been communicated. Mgcinisihlalo, the other theme that I see emerging here in the questions from the audience has to do with governance. What is the right governance to be had in an organization for a digital transformation journey? What does that governance may look like?
So I always say it's easy to go and develop new governance protocols that sit side by side to the organization. So this concept initially, when we started thinking about digital transformation programs in the firm was do it offsite, literally physically and remotely, and then bring it back to the organization, because we're fearful of the fact that the organization antibodies were going to chew this new concept out, and it was going to have a stillbirth. But the key element of this is to use the structures and the governance processes, the firm that already exists. They've been tried and tested, they've worked for years, and resist the temptation of including too many new governance protocols. For example, we use the board, which is a board of peers, board of directors of the firm, to test the strategy, including the digital one. We make the executive, individual and collectively, responsible for the outcomes of the digital. Of course, there is one person, i.e. me, who has the most KPIs around digital transformation, but all of the executives have elements of what are you responsible for in terms of this collective, collaborated strategy of the firm. So it's important that we use the firm's existing structures, but to be clear around the clarity that is needed. The biggest change has actually not come about in terms of governance and all these other things. It's in the mindset and the culture of the firm. So I always say every partner, 350 plus partners of the Deloitte Africa firm, are the main culture change managers for the firm when it comes to digital. And it's simple things like not rocking up in the meeting with the folder of paper and using the digital platforms that we have in the firm, iPads and other electronic devices. Excuse me.
Very well. We know that, you know, culture eats strategy for breakfast, and every digitization initiative becomes a side dish on that plate for sure. And Ihlalo, if I may follow up on this here, you talk about culture. That's a really interesting component because you have organizational cultures, you have country cultures, and following up on that, I'm curious because you have such a global perspective, and the audience comes from so many different locations. We have here Africa represented, and Europe and Americas, Asia. I mean, really everywhere. Australia, every continent except Antarctica that I'm aware of. And the question is, how do you see are digital transformations impacted by the different continents in which we're doing this? Do you see in a global perspective differences in the way that different parts of the world are tackling digital transformation, or it's pretty much kind of a common approach all over the world?
There are some fundamentals that are common, I would say. So what technology has done and the globalization of our firm. So maybe some bit of context here is our global chief executive, Puneet Ranjan, drove a strategy of consolidating our various geographies to create a stronger, bigger member firm geography firm. So for example, Deloitte Africa is now 14 plus countries, mostly English speaking countries across the continent. So what that has driven is more globalization. So there's some fundamentals, some guardrails that we know for certain. Everyone is experiencing it here in Johannesburg, the same as they're experiencing it in Lagos. And that is, for example, this explosion of the need for technologies. But there are some cultural nuances, and those are largely driven from a geographical perspective, whether they are with a diversity and inclusion lens or just local nuances that you need to be sensitive to. So what we do, as an example, we make the local managing partners ultimately accountable for the outcomes of the strategy. And we agree certain very clear KPIs around this is what we'd like to see, and how you go about doing it is informed by your understanding of what the cultural needs are in your organization. But the fundamentals and the non-negotiables are absolutely common and key across all of the geographies.
Very well, very well. You also talked in your presentation about the need and the challenge for upskilling and reskilling professionals for the successful digital transformation. We have lots of leaders and lots of professionals here in this conference who are wondering what type of skills I need to develop for the next 5 to 10 years to remain relevant and indispensable to the organizations that I serve. So talk a little bit about that, the skill sets that you see as critical for success from a professional standpoint in these digital transformation journeys.
So when we started the program, and here this is I said there was a number one challenge, and that is how firms are adopting this, and number one fear that firms lead with technologies rather than with the strategy. The second one, I'll say, goes beyond the firm itself. It goes into what we are trying to do as a continent, and it is one of my largest fears is as the world continues on this technology revolution, that there will be parts of the world, including our own continent, that are left behind because of a skills deficit. And so some of the work that we do with our clients goes beyond just creating value for those organizations. It goes to impact and purpose. What do you do, for example, to change the lives of individuals that you work with in the communities that you operate? Because if they're left behind in this digital revolution, then we have problems for many generations to come. And the challenge, the opportunities that this continent has, for example, is we can use these digital technologies like telcos, like drone technology in healthcare, to really transcend and leapfrog many generations of poverty in our continent and adopt this new technology. But if there's no skill sets and there's no expertise, then the situation is even more dire than what we're finding ourselves here. So the first one is this thirst of knowledge. So in the firm, for example, part of our digital fluency program, every individual that enters the Deloitte Africa firm needs to go through this, is to create design theory and to teach people to think and to have a common understanding of how you think as an individual and how you can collaborate with others that you work with. That's the key first element, more than just teaching them around AI and drones and other technologies. It's the ability for them to problem solve and resolve their own issues.
That's terrific. I think that you touch on something that's very important, that the skill set that can be built on technologies that allow entire societies to leapfrog stages of development and really benefit from it. But we need to get to get a large cross section of society upskill in these new ways of thinking and these new technologies and approaches, and perhaps at a higher level, you know, collaborative leadership skills, innovation, execution skills that come with that. Ihlalo, I have to thank you deeply from our global audience for you to take the time to share your expertise, your industry leadership with all of us, and we're very much better off as a result of those insights. So thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you, Jose. I look forward to the rest of the conference and good luck to you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please a big virtual applause to Mgcinisihlalo Jordan for a terrific presentation on directly from Johannesburg, South Africa to our global community. So very, very grateful for his engagement and thought leadership. We are wrapping up now this last session of the first day of Digital Workplace Transformation Live. You all have been terrific on engaging, asking meaningful questions, and deeply understanding what's being shared and collaborating on building up our knowledge and skill base on this very exciting and challenging concepts related to successful digital transformations. We talk about technology, we talk about governance, we talk about culture, and I want to give you a preview of what's coming up tomorrow. We have another 4 great presentations coming in. We're going to start with leveraging digital twins to accelerate Industry 4.0. That's going to be presented by two CEOs of their organizations on how they're leveraging digital twins to accelerate digital transformation, followed by a presentation from the Vice President of Global Digital Communication Channels at Teva Pharmaceuticals. And she's going to talk about transforming the way of working in the digital era from the biopharma perspective, and then how the industry is changing in very, very quickly as a result of all that's going on in the world right now. Then we're going to have the experts and leaders from UiPath talking about the automated enterprise, robotics process automation, intelligent automation from global leaders in this area. And we're going to have Bobby Patrick, who is the Chief Marketing Officer for the organization, and two guest companies. We'll have Jeff King, who is the VP of Procurement and Process Development, overseeing 15,000 suppliers for Sonic Automotive. And we are going to have the Senior Automation Leader and the Leader of Intelligent Automation Programs at ADT participating in a three-way conversation tomorrow as well. And then we're going to wrap up the day with another great leader from the African continent. And I'm talking about Steve Epps, who is the Chief Advisor on Digital Transformation for USNC, Ultra Safe Nuclear. And he's going to be talking to us about the journey of digital transformation in that space. So very excited about what's coming up tomorrow. We're going to be at the same time that we started here and finish that, of course, in your own time zones. And for those of you who have additional questions, want to interact, engage, look up the post under my name on LinkedIn. You're going to see comments from the speakers, questions from other audience members. I'm going to be putting a quick update on the presentations under the comments as soon as I'm done here. And I will meet every one of you, I hope, tomorrow, and others who are going to join us on this journey of digital workplace transformation. So whatever you are in the world, have a good rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you back here for another terrific day of presentations from industry and thought leaders. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.